everyone, I'm Jen Stone, founder of Feng Shui by Jen, and thanks for tuning in to my Feng Shui video. Today I want to specifically talk about the different calendar systems that we have in place and why the solar calendar in particular is the most important one when it comes to doing Feng Shui and Bazi. There's actually a lot of different calendar systems, but we're going to be focusing on three in particular. The first one is the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar is today's internationally accepted civil calendar and the most widely used in the world today. It was instituted and named after Pope Gregory and put in place in 1582 to replace its predecessor, the Julian calendar. So the Gregorian calendar is actually a form of solar calendar as well. It is based on a 365-day year divided into 12 irregular months. And a solar calendar is essentially a calendar that indicates the position of Earth as it revolves around the sun. In common usage, the 1st of January was regarded as the New Year's Day and celebrated as such. So the Gregorian calendar begins on January 1st and ends on December 31st. A lunar calendar is based on the cycles of the moon's phases. In other words, it's talking about the moon's position as it orbits around the Earth. And because each moon cycle is uneven, it is common for the months of the lunar calendars to vary between 29 and 30 days. And so for a single lunar year, it is essentially a little less than 354 days, so a little bit different from the Gregorian calendar. And even though the Gregorian calendar is in common and legal use in most countries, the lunar calendar is still a very important system because the lunar calendar is used to determine religious festivals and national and cultural holidays. The first day of the Lunar New Year is usually determined on the day when the astronomical new moon occurs in a particular time zone. So for 2017, the new year based on the lunar calendar was on January 28, 2017. Now that you have an understanding of the difference between a lunar and solar calendar, let's switch gear and talk about the traditional Chinese calendar. A traditional Chinese calendar actually combines both systems together. That's why it's called a lunisolar calendar. It has both the moon and the sun. But it's also a very important tool for professionals that do Bazi and classical Feng Shui. Here's an example of a Chinese calendar. It's actually a copy of my teacher's book by Grandmaster Raymond Lo. As you can see inside, it looks a little complicated, but it's actually made up of 22 Chinese characters in 60 unique combinations. But the reason why I'm bringing this whole calendar system up is because one of the many questions I get from people is, when does the new animal year begin? The confusion that many people have is incorrectly following the lunar calendar system for determining the start of the new Chinese animal year. But if you recall from my previous explanation, the lunar calendar is used only for outlining the dates for traditional public holidays. But in professional practice, especially when you're doing classical Feng Shui for houses and Bazi for people's birthdays, it is important to note that we follow the Chinese calendar, not the Gregorian and not the lunar calendar. So just like the Gregorian calendar always begins on January 1st, the Chinese calendar always begins on February 4th. February 4th is an important date to remember because it is also called the arrival of spring. It signals the first day of spring, which is essentially the start of the wood element in the Chinese 5-element cycle. That's why the new animal year always begins on February 4th. And I emphasize this difference emphatically because let's take 2017 as an example. If you recall earlier, the lunar calendar year started on January 28th. What that means is babies born between January 28th to February 4th, 2017, they are still technically born in the monkey year. Only babies born after February 4th are born in the rooster year. Unfortunately, many people, including the media, still get this information wrong because of their lack of understanding of the different calendar systems in place. So, that's one of the tricky things when it comes to measuring time. To summarize, the Gregorian calendar starts on January 1st, and it is the most widely used calendar in the world today. Pretty straightforward. The lunar calendar has a varied start date between mid-January to mid-February because the moon cycles are uneven, and this is used predominantly for outlining cultural and religious holidays, including the Chinese Lunar New Year. And then the Chinese calendar always starts on February 4th as the first day of spring. And this is used for professional practices such as classical Feng Shui for houses and Bazi for people's birthdays. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you were able to learn something new. Here at Feng Shui by Jen, we only practice and teach classical Feng Shui. Until next time. Bye-bye.